Binita Kane is a lung doctor. Hello, Binita.
Hi, Stephen. Good evening.
Hi. Are people still getting very sick from this?
Oh, that's a big question. I think the number of people getting very sick from this is really very low now because of our vaccination rates. But one of the things we do worry about is that the under 75s are not being offered an autumn booster this year, as far as we know. And immunity rates will be waning from previous vaccinations. So it remains to be seen whether the number of sick people will increase due to that reason. But at the moment, your chances of getting very sick if you're vaccinated remain low.
You know, you've hit the nail on the head in terms of something I was talking to my friends about just yesterday, which is, where is the booster? Where are they for those people who are under 75 who want one? Because immunity does wane. So for those people who listen to the government message about how important the boosters are they not being offered one at all this winter?
Not as far as I'm aware, but I'm not an expert on this subject, so I'm not sure of the policy and what exactly is going on. But as far as I'm aware, they won't be offered to people under 75.
Okay, that's really interesting, isn't it? And as a doctor, no doubt you've seen the damage that COVID can do, Binita.
Yeah, and I think from a personal perspective, it doesn't worry me that I'm going to get really sick from COVID if I contract it now, because I have actually had 4 vaccinations now. But what worries me more is the emerging evidence about the longer term impacts of COVID, even in mild disease. And I have certainly seen, as a healthcare professional, colleagues, friends, and even my own daughter's lives be devastated by long COVID. And I think it's a real worry for our population that we are allowing repeat infections, particularly in the younger generation.
What happened to your daughter?
So my daughter's 11, and her original illness was in January 2021, and she suffered with long COVID since then. So it's been a really, really difficult 18 months for us, and challenging in all sorts of different ways. I mean, it's been really life-changing for our family.
What have been the symptoms, if you don't mind me asking, that have stayed with her?
So when she was first ill, she had a mild illness like most children do. And she just never really recovered. She was quite fatigued. A few weeks after her original illness, we had to rush her into hospital. She had this very severe abdominal pain. And she had the test came back negative, and she came home, that grumbled on, and then various other things. And it wasn't really until they went back to school, because of course we were in lockdown at that time, in March 2021, that we kind of really realised something was wrong, because she just couldn't cope with doing a week in school. And that was with adjustments we'd already made, because we knew she wasn't right. And so she has severe fatigue to the point where she now needs to use a wheelchair for any distance walking. Her school attendance was, until recently, about 20% over the last year. And she has a range of symptoms. There's been over 200 symptoms described in children and adults in total.
And was your daughter a healthy 11-year-old until that?
She was completely healthy, no underlying conditions, very fit, active, loved doing gymnastics, sports. Yeah, she loved life and was like any other healthy kid.
Binita, that's terrifying. And now she's in a wheelchair if she has to walk a long distance.
Yeah, and she's not alone. The latest ONS figures tell us there's something around 120,000 young people in the UK suffering with long COVID. 26,000 of those have had symptoms for over a year, like my daughter. And you know, this is an illness that isn't really even recognised at the moment by the government. There isn't large amounts of research going into long COVID in children or any at all, actually, very little. And there is no support specifically outlined for these children in schools. And the long COVID services just can't meet demand because they are under-resourced and underfunded. So it's really difficult.
Does your daughter face a future then here in her teenage years where she's just waiting to see if this goes away in her body or not. Is that where she's at?
I think that's the position most children with long COVID are in. And this isn't a new issue. Post-viral illnesses have existed for a long time. So you may have heard of ME/CFS, which is caused by other viruses like Epstein-Barr. And these poor children have been in this situation for a long time. And it's been very under-recognised and very under-researched. So her future is very uncertain. I think she's lucky in one regard that I have contacts in the medical world and I've become very interested in long COVID. I'm now I campaign for long COVID kids. And I've been able to take her abroad to access research that we don't have in the UK. And she's been started on some medication which has improved her, I would say, 20 to 30%, which actually, when you can't live a life, that's been just enough to give her life back. And, you know, I feel very proud in the future.
And with those other viruses you talk about, what does history tell us then? Is over time, do most children recover or not when other viruses affect them?
So I think the answer to that depends on who you talk to. So I think specialists might say, yes, most children recover and they will recover after 12 to 18 months. When you talk to ME patients and charities, they will perhaps have a different view because they've got children who've been ill for years and years and years. And I think the bottom line is that there just hasn't been enough research. I mean, there's data from the States to suggest that ME is one of the most under-researched of the under-researched conditions and is one of the things that causes worse quality of life than a whole plethora of other chronic illnesses, including cancer. And perhaps if we had invested the research in post-viral illnesses before now, we wouldn't be in such a pickle with long COVID. But on the other hand, I think long COVID will hopefully drive research and treatments that will help everybody.
And with all of that context, finally, do you still wear a mask? Do you still be careful?
I'm very cautious. I think I've seen the worst of the worst. I've worked on the front line of the pandemic for 2 years. I've seen, as I said, lives decimated by long COVID. I follow the research. I'm aware of what this virus can do to the body. So I am very cautious. I try and avoid crowds and I wear a good quality mask, as in an FFP2 or FFP3 mask if I'm out in public indoors. And where possible, I try and meet people outdoors and eat outdoors. Or if I have to eat indoors, I'll make sure it's a big airy restaurant that's got ventilation. I always check out the ventilation now. Hey?
How long are you going to do that for?
I'm going to do this until the rates in this country are low enough that the risk of catching COVID isn't worse than the consequences of catching COVID, if you know what I mean. So even if the risk is low, the consequence of that risk is still too high for me at the moment to stop doing what I'm doing. And I think at a time where the virus has genuinely become mild and we know that it is like the common cold, because I don't believe at all it is at the moment, I'm going to follow the research, I'm going to follow the science and make an informed decision.
Binita, thank you very much indeed. That is really fascinating. Thank you for talking to us and I hope your daughter gets well soon.